The man was more terrifying than a demon. With just one look, people jump off buildings on the spot, wet themselves in fear, and even teachers instantly avoid bowing or meeting his eyes when standing before his body, which carries the name of the protagonist Quiwu. But under his tall and intimidating appearance, Quiwu was actually a 700-year-old virgin because the world was about to be destroyed, and the god Zeus had sent his 9 daughters to the human world, and whenever they fell in love with the main character, they would gain power beyond everything. And all of this started when a few beautiful girls suddenly appeared in his house. Due to his scary appearance and severe social anxiety, it was not surprising that the main character became the demon in the eyes of the world, and of course, facing others' misunderstandings, he was too lazy to explain because for him, nothing was more important than quietly reading a book alone. But he never expected that the only place where he could escape from all troubles, his home, would be invaded by these girls at this moment. As they stared at each other in shock, the main character planned to leave, but unexpectedly, he was played with at midnight, not knowing that this emotional scene made the 7th uncle, who already had feelings for him, explode on the spot. And while the two were arguing, the main character tried to leave but accidentally fell and got beaten up badly, and then 2 other girls arrived upon hearing the commotion and with a figure flashing past like the wind before they could understand the situation. And when the main character returned to his room, he was already filled with murderous intent, thinking about how his home was invaded by 9 women. They were like demons, and to not let them disturb his studies, he planned to call the police. But at this moment, a girl with an ahogi appeared. As the 2nd sister among the 9, she was best at playing the emotional card, saying if he drove them away, their father would blame them, and they would end up homeless on the streets. Hearing this, the main character could only compromise because who could refuse such a cute encounter? And soon, it was dinner time. Having dinner with several beautiful girls made him feel uneasy, and he couldn't understand why the girls were not afraid of him, thinking that this would affect his studies. While he was considering how to get them to leave properly, it was unknowingly overheard by Nanaki, who was passing by. And among these sisters, the one he feared most was her. Before he could catch his breath, the 2nd sister noticed his fear, which stunned him. So to ease the situation, she immediately organized a study session, and while the 2 were alone, Nanaki gathered her courage to ask if he disliked being with her, and as expected, she got a clear answer from him. Obviously, at that moment, she didn't understand the feelings the girl had for him. Meanwhile, on the other side, the 5th sister was very dissatisfied with what the 2nd sister did because the 7th sister was already the strongest among them, and as love goddesses, they could only gain the power to defeat demons by falling in love with him, originally wanting the main character to take this chance to bond with Nanaki, but because she was too nervous, the main character accidentally dropped his eraser, and the girl, with her intelligence offline, even though her father said wearing glasses would make her smarter, still could not understand the equations. While she was troubled, she suddenly seemed to sense something, and as expected, the main character was caught red-handed. All these accidents made Nanaki doubt if he was really studying hard, and this was a promise he made to his mother, to study well and become a useful person in the future. And just as the atmosphere dropped to freezing, the 2nd sister arrived in time and asked them to help her buy some tissues while holding hands, leaving the main character confused. And just then, the broadcast announced that a demon had been appearing nearby, making Nanaki immediately suspect the main character, not understanding why he never explained himself when misunderstood, which was so different from the hero who once saved her life, as he was so cool at that time. And just then, with space tearing apart, a giant monster suddenly appeared, the demon from the broadcast. While people were panicking, it suddenly disappeared. But it didn't actually disappear. It was sealed inside a barrier, and this demon was much stronger than the sisters had imagined. Standing in front of the terrifying demon, the main character only wanted to survive, but as he tried to escape, the girl was ready to fight the demon alone. Unexpectedly, a building collapsed towards them, and as the dust cleared, Nanaki never imagined that the one who saved her would be the man who wanted to run away. Although the main character had been alone since childhood, misunderstood by everyone, he had a very gentle heart, reminding Nanaki of the first time he saved her, proving that he was indeed brave, unchanged from before. And after gaining Nanaki's recognition, the love system awakened. As legends said, there were 9 war goddesses who grew stronger the more they fell in love, because even if their power was severely weakened by love, with countless blades falling, it only took one strike for the demon to be sliced into countless pieces, 328 parts, and my own soul was so weak. That morning, the cute 3 sisters came to school as usual, and unbelievably, the main character had become their boyfriend, something he never imagined. As the girl simply kissed him once, she gained the strongest power in the world, shocking the girl beside her who wanted that power for herself. The moment she decided to start her strategy to capture the male lead's heart, the girl who thought herself unbeatable in the kitchen turned the male lead into a projectile warrior in an instant with her cooking. And before all this, as the day of exam results arrived, as expected, the male lead maintained his consistent consideration, but in reality, he was at the bottom of the list, and the reason was simple. He was born with severe social anxiety, and whenever people were around, he became so nervous that he couldn't focus on the test, making Kishu so angry she could barely contain herself. But just when it seemed nothing unexpected would happen, something did, as the male lead ran away in fear, and at the same time, the cries for help echoed through the hallway, making making Kishu's heart ache because she knew how hard the male lead tried, studying late into the night every day. Yet despite all his efforts, the results remained disappointing. And just then, as the broadcast played, the male lead, carrying an uneasy feeling, walked into the empty classroom. But in the next moment, he was suddenly bound by chains, and only one person among the 9 sisters could use such an ability. The 5th sister, Wu-Ye, whose purpose was simple. Before the next demon appeared, she wanted to date the male lead to quickly increase her power. But beautiful women often wore one face in front and another behind, and Wu-Ye certainly didn't truly like the male lead. She merely saw him as a tool to raise her level to the strongest, so she could receive the father's head-patting approval, for only a man as strong as her father was worthy of her trust. And while she was lost in her fantasy, unaware that plans never keep up with changes, the male lead hadn't even had lunch, and the girl, taking out the bento she had carefully prepared, wanted him to eat. And as the love system awakened, she thought her mission was about to succeed, but in the next second, the male lead, too nervous, turned into a projectile warrior. Yet even so, the girl refused to give up, and after failing 81 times, she began to question her life. And just then, as the school bell rang, the male lead decided to leave, while the girl found it strange that despite being so excellent, she couldn't grasp even a little of him, and her worries were quickly noticed by Kishu, who remembered how the girl used to be a crybaby, but had changed so much since coming to the human world, and encouraged by Kishu as she prepared to find the male lead again. Unexpectedly, a demon suddenly appeared in the air, and unlike the last demon, this one needed to be restrained before it could be defeated, and Wu-Ye's chains could do just that. But considering her low level at that moment, Kishu decided to fight the demon herself to buy them time. And while Wu-Ye fought the demon with difficulty, in the corner of the gym, the male lead was pushed into a desperate situation, and though the girl did this to save the world, the male lead's heart was filled with 10,000 unwilling thoughts. But realizing that if the world was destroyed, studying would become meaningless, he reluctantly agreed. And as he approached, unsurprisingly, at the last second, the girl felt fear and slapped him, claiming it was because she saw a bug on his face. And though she forced herself to overcome her fear, tears still rolled down her cheeks. And at that moment, seeing Wu-Ye's gratitude, the male lead was at a loss. But as memories surfaced, he found his answer, and that was the legendary head-patting comfort, something he had never seen before. But the large, warm hand reminded Wu-Ye of how her father would comfort her when she cried as a child, the familiar touch making her feel the same warmth again. And meanwhile, on the other side, even though Kishu pierced the demon with her sword, it had no effect, and instead, the demon, with a flash, appeared behind her, grabbing her while draining her power, leaving her unable to move as she was about to be swallowed alive. But at the critical moment, those familiar chains appeared, now powered up after Wu-Ye had leveled up, and using them, she restrained the demon while Kishu delivered a fatal strike, finally defeating the demon easily. And the next morning, as the male lead was on a date with Liu Hai, the super popular idol, she was unexpectedly harassed by a few thugs. And what does it feel like to date a demon? This cute girl wasn't afraid at all, but was even excited because when she was 7, she had been so scared by a demon that she wet herself. And since then, she developed a near-obsessive affection for boys with scary appearances. And before this, as a well-known idol, she was adored by many boys, but was also the weakest among the battle maidens. And to change this awkward reality with the help of her sisters, her mission that day was to date the male lead to level up. But unexpectedly, in front of the male lead's terrifying presence, even the simple act of eating cake triggered her inner obsession, making her start to fantasize about the male lead. And as a familiar voice came, it was their fashionable classmate who bragged about being close to the idol Liu Hai while mocking the male lead's demon-like appearance, since in that area the male lead was notoriously scary. But in the next moment, seeing that familiar face, unexpectedly, the classmate crashed through the window, and as always, everyone suspected the male lead as the culprit. But the male lead, used to others' misunderstandings, didn't care. Though it made Liu Hai feel a bit sad, and wanting to give him a happy day, she promised to go anywhere with him, and they went to a bookstore. And for the male lead, who knew nothing but studying, nothing was more important than grades, and seeing his serious, fully committed look once again touched the girl's heart. As when she was young, Liu Hai was attacked by a demon and lost the courage to face difficulties, always believing she couldn't do anything alone, until she came to the human world and, encouraged by her sisters and supported by her fans as she became an idol, slowly regained her confidence, understanding that she couldn't always rely on others to protect her, and that only by becoming strong herself could she protect the family she wanted to protect, which made the male lead remember how, when his mother was critically ill, that the male lead had just walked away. And what the girl couldn't understand was that even though the male lead and the demons were so similar, he wasn't afraid at all, and instead, he had long been moved in his heart. So when the male lead finished his shopping and was about to head back, he was unexpectedly stopped by Liu Hai's tender plea to stay, unaware that a yellow-haired villain was lurking nearby, watching them with drooling hunger. For as a villain, his greatest wish was to swallow these girls alive, and as his saliva nearly dripped to the ground, he was almost mistaken for a pervert by an old lady passing by. And thinking that if these girls continued to get stronger, it would be harder to defeat them in the future, he planned to ambush them. But in the next moment, sensing a murderous aura, he saw a platypus-like creature appear, and as the famous idol Liu Hai was in the area, the entire mall plunged into chaos, and soon Liu Hai recognized the creature as the demon Garamon, who, although the lowest level demon, was powerful because he loved gossiping about others' weaknesses, and if Liu Hai was discovered by her fans, it would cause a disaster, ruining her date with the male lead. And while the girl was panicking, the male lead felt sick just thinking about being surrounded by people, realizing that escaping was the top priority. But then remembering what Liu Hai had said before, the socially anxious male lead grabbed her hand and decided to run with her, and with the male lead holding her hand in front and countless fans chasing behind, the thrilling chase made the girl's heart flutter wildly. But while escaping, they accidentally ran into a warehouse, and with the pursuers close behind, the male lead came up with an idea to hide, not knowing that inside the cramped wardrobe, a boy and a girl were pressed close together, nervously watching the door, and the cramped feeling made the girl's imagination run wild. But the urgent matter was to escape without being discovered, and it reminded the girl that as a battle goddess, her holy sword power could break the current situation if she could transform. But at her current level, she needed the male lead's power, and that meant a kiss from him. And just when the girl thought she could finally see if a kiss was sweet or sour, she forgot the important fact of their height difference. And with the small wardrobe space, Liu Hai decided to use another method, and meanwhile, guided by robots, though they couldn't find Liu Hai, the familiar shadow made everyone certain, and they spotted a piece of clothing peeking through the wardrobe crack, and as they approached, thinking it was the end, the male lead was in despair while Liu Hai whispered that maintaining this position for 20 seconds would let her transform. And just as the fans came close, the countdown ended, a golden light burst, and the love system activated, and in a flash of wind, the wardrobe was empty, and when the male lead opened his eyes, he found himself floating in the air, all thanks to Liu Hai's power. And though the date was barely a success, the many incidents made Liu Hai worry whether she had truly given the male lead a happy day and seeing the setting sun. Childhood memories flooded back to the male lead, remembering how he and his mother would come here after shopping to watch the sunset from the rooftop, with the scene before him exactly the same as back then. And there are always those people who, though born unsuited for studying, work harder than anyone else but end up facing the awkward reality of falling short. And without exception, they suffer from small childlike fears, and to cheer up the male lead without giving him a chance to refuse, everyone decided to play a ghost-catching game. But as always, unexpected things happened, and to make the game more exciting, the rule was that the ghost needed to steal everyone's bandages. And unexpectedly, the second sister drew the red lot purely by luck, scaring everyone because even though she usually looked confused, she was absurdly powerful, known in the god realm as Her Majesty the Queen, while San Lu used her power to unravel threads from her clothes to track the second sister's movements. And during this, as the male lead and Wu Yi waited nearby, Wu Yi, since the last head pat from the male lead, couldn't forget the feeling and wanted it again and again. And at the same time, San Lu, sensing something wrong, told them to leave quickly, but it was too late, as the sudden appearance of the second sister made them truly worried when they saw the glasses on her face, because the second sister had poor eyesight and always squinted, but when she put on her glasses, it meant she was serious, and for the male lead's safety, San Lu used her threads to send him away while she and Wu Yi stayed behind to face the judgment of death. And as the male lead safely landed, he accidentally fell on Yakumo, who, as the most black-bellied among the sisters, looked pure and kind but was sharp-tongued, cutting to the heart with just a few words, making the male lead shrink in embarrassment on the spot. And then Kishu suggested making a plan, considering that the second sister's holy sword power could summon countless soul warriors from within a castle and even form strong castle walls in normal mode, meaning there was no way to win, and the best option was to run. But it was already too late, and with Yakumo's flute playing, Kishu barely managed to summon her holy sword while the male lead tried to hide in a warehouse. But within 3 seconds, a familiar figure crashed down, and seeing the trophy in the second sister's hand meant that even Kishu had been defeated. And as the second sister approached, just as the male lead's innocence was about to be taken, a delicate lucky bag was placed in front of him, revealing that from the start of the game, everyone's goal was to give this gift to the male lead, wanting to wish him success in his exams since he studied late every night. But the male lead had already fainted from fear, and that evening, with the school festival coming, everyone wanted to take the chance to level up, and at that time the class decided to open a maid cafe, making Kishu extremely excited, remembering that her father once said that maid outfits were the pinnacle of this world. The battle uniform inside made Kishu's heart race with excitement, and although it seemed like the male lead had no interest in the Academy Festival, the truth was the exact opposite. He actually looked forward to the festival because during that time, he could find a quiet corner to read without interruption until his hands went numb. Early that morning, as Kishu did his duties as the day's class helper, thinking of the approaching festival, he worked extra hard, but one thing kept bothering him. The male lead hadn't looked at him even once since last night, making Kishu's thoughts run wild, wondering if it was because he lacked charm compared to the other sisters. And just then, a fashionable, spiky-haired guy approached, trying to help Kishu clean, only to be sprayed with foam by the girl, who apologized casually. Meanwhile, 2 girls found Kishu and asked for his help because the student council needed to inspect inspect each class's festival event, and since the girl originally assigned had called in sick, they had no choice but to have Kishu take her place. Wearing a girl's outfit made Kishu feel utterly miserable, and when a yellow-haired villain arrived and noticed the male lead nearby, he was filled with the desire to tear them both apart, being a member of the evil god faction, enemies of the god realm. And before Kishu could sense anything wrong, the inspection began, and unsurprisingly, the male lead became the one to be served. And while he was so nervous that cold sweat dripped down his back, the girl decided to use this chance to show her cuteness to him and touch everyone's hearts. But the male lead remained completely unmoved, prompting the girl to approach him boldly, placing a freshly made sundae in front of him that seemed to lack a final decoration. So as she tried to add a bit more cream, she used too much force, splashing cream all over her face. And the scene made everyone around stare with envy, wishing the man before them was themselves. And just then, the male lead pulled a stone from his bag, and in the next second, several humanoid demons appeared. And before Kishu could understand where they came from, since the girl hadn't transformed, she was just like an ordinary person, and in a slip was grabbed by the demons. But as she called out her name, the male lead's aura exploded, transforming into a pure-hearted warrior, delivering punches and kicks to defeat the demons one by one, unknowingly making the love-struck girl fall even deeper for him. At this moment, the yellow-haired villain from the enemy faction realized that the battle maiden's time in their human forms was limited, and as the sun set, while the male lead and Kishu walked home together, with Kishu complaining that the male lead only cared about studying and never appreciated others' appearances, he didn't know that in the male lead's eyes, the cutest person was Kishu himself, and the realization made Kishu's face turn bright red, forcing him to quicken his pace to hide his embarrassment. Meanwhile, the girl, who had just gained holy sword power, never expected to encounter the Demon King so soon, a being with unpierceable nails that reflected any physical attack back, but that could not stop the undefeated girl, for she was protecting her most important family. Before this, as the festival approached, the girls' class had prepared a maid cafe, and a dance party was planned for the evening, and while the sisters wanted the girl to take this opportunity, the male lead was unwilling, afraid that his fearsome reputation would get him killed if seen by others, leaving the girl deeply disappointed and making her walk away with a heavy heart. With encouragement from her sisters, she realized the male lead could not possibly be unaware of her feelings, especially since the lucky bag was something she made with her own hands. And just then, the yellow-haired villain called out to the male lead, confirming he was alone, deciding to drop his disguise. Meanwhile, as Wu Yi and the girl were searching for the male lead, a giant demon suddenly appeared, infecting nearby classmates and turning them into half-demon forms. And every time a demon appeared, the barrier power granted to the male lead by Zeus would activate, ensuring the barrier remained as long as he lived. The urgent task was to defeat the demon, and under San Lu's careful plan, the girl was to handle the half-demon forms outside the barrier, while the others went inside to block the demon. But without the male lead, they could not transform, making their powers weak and practically no different from ordinary humans, and soon they fell into the demon's grasp. Meanwhile, the villain behind it all, eating a burger while watching the battle maiden's defeat without lifting a finger, felt excited, and though he initially wanted to invite the male lead to dinner, he ended up beating him brutally when the male lead remained silent. And as his consciousness faded, thinking he was about to die, memories of the lucky bag flashed before him, and feeling guilty for always dragging everyone down, he had decided to return it to the girl, believing he was useless aside from studying. But in the girl's heart, the male lead was not worthless, for every time she was in danger, he would step forward without hesitation to protect her, and remembering there were people waiting for him, the male lead finally stood up again. But how could a human defeat a demon? Just then, the second sister arrived in time, having anticipated the demon's attack and marking everyone beforehand, and as she slowly put on her glasses, she decided to stop hiding her strength. And before the villain could react, a wall rose up, and no one could have expected that this seemingly clueless girl would become terrifyingly strong just by putting on her glasses. The male lead, trying to escape, watched in shock as the girl's body was suddenly pierced through, the result of a curse the villain had placed on the male lead, causing anyone who moved more than a meter away from him to be torn apart. But unexpectedly, the girl's torn body healed in the next second, thanks to the lucky bag she carried, which contained a drop of world tree dew, a rare divine resource that only those with true faith could receive. The only belief left in the male lead's heart at that moment was to reach the girl's side, and what the villain could never have imagined was that the male lead, who had seemed like a worthless coward just a second ago, had now completely forgotten the fear of death. For when the male lead was a child, everyone around him feared him so much that he grew up without a single friend, and during that time, he promised his mother that if he ever met someone who wasn't afraid of him and could become his friend, he would give everything, even his life, to protect her. As the demon before him was defeated, a girl holding a long spear appeared, and this was the first appearance of Yihua, who was also the strongest bullet among the 9 sisters, clearing a path for the male lead so that he could find the girl. And as the saying goes, yellow-haired girls are always tsundere. So while she was hitting the male lead just moments before, the next moment, she threw herself into his arms, but the most important thing now was to transform quickly and defeat the demon. Though before that, there was one very important thing to do. Kishu, which was to clean the remaining filth on their bodies, also a condition to trigger the love system. And this scene was so exciting that it was worth watching closely. As the demon's attack came at the most critical moment, the girl arrived in time, now at level 23, and in this state she could freely control the holy sword to attack enemies, but their opponent this time was a demon known as the Devourer, who could not only reflect all physical attacks but also swallow the opponent's weapons to convert them into her own power. But such a challenge could not stop the cheat-like girl, who, drawing her sharp sword, didn't give the demon a chance and, with a lightning-fast series of strikes, completely defeated it. Meanwhile, on the other side, even though the second sister was still in a normal state, it didn't stop her from fighting back against the enemy, but in a desperate move to survive. After firing 2 flying swords, the villain disappeared on the spot. Soon, the Academy Festival reached its final stage, and amid the cheers of everyone, Liu Hai won the title of the most beautiful girl. And before this, the 3 girls who had been forced to participate had made a promise that whoever won would get to dance with the male lead at the evening party. And even though Kishu didn't win, Liu Hai still gave her the chance, because the male lead also wanted to use this to seek the girl's forgiveness. And what the girl never expected was that when she simply kissed the male lead, nothing happened. But the scene was fully witnessed by the other sisters, who suspected her of being a heart-stealing cat. And it was hard to believe because before, just giving the male lead a dance was enough to gain transformation power. But just recently, they had received a gift from their father in the God Realm, which included a letter recording the demon's appearance time. And before making their battle plan, the second sister decided to let Kishu transform first. But even though Kishu obediently did as told, nothing happened.